all of the tests that can come up on the IELTS Academic Writing Task 1, the one that students struggle with the most is the table. But it's so boring, they say, and I agree, it's very boring because there's no pretty lines and there's no charts and there's no graphs and there's no pictures, it's just literally numbers on a screen. How do we write about these numbers on a screen? How do we get a level 7? That's what I'm here to talk to you about today. Let's get on with the table. Before we start the clock, let's have a quick look at the question and the text we are looking at. It says the table below shows the proportions of students that go to different secondary schools in Cambodia between 2010 and 2020. Summarise the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Write at least 150 words. That's the table, that's our question. Remember, every time in IELTS Academic Writing Task 1 you need to understand and plan. Then you need to write an introduction, then an overview, and then 2 body paragraphs. Start the clock. I'll be honest with you, the table that you get in your IELTS Academic Writing Task 1 will probably be a little bit more complicated than this one. However, you still will only have 150 words, and you'll see how easy it is to get up to those words. The first thing you need to do is to look for the key features or the main ideas that you can see in the table. So I will look at this and I can see that private schools and government schools have stayed relatively stable. Private schools, they've only gone from 15% to 10%, and government schools have stayed at around 70-75%. The proportion of the students attending specialist schools is going up quite quickly between 2010 and 2020. Also, the amount of students that do not go to school is declining. As we can see, in 2010 it was 10%, and in 2020 it's down to 0%. That's definitely a key feature. And finally, the government schools are always making up about 3/4 or 70-75% of the data. These are the things that I would look at in my planning stage, and I would use them for my body paragraphs later on. As always, and you're probably sick of this by now, when you are writing an introduction to the IELTS Academic Writing Task 1, you need to paraphrase the introduction. So let's have a look at the introduction. The table below shows the proportions of students that go to different secondary schools in Cambodia between 2010 and 2020. Summarise the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. So the first thing I will change is the same as every task. I would change the table below shows, and I would change that to the table gives information about. You can also use illustrates. The next part is a little bit different because it is unique to each question. So in this question it says the proportions of students that go to different secondary schools. Now you can change proportions to percentages, you can change students to young people, and you can change that go to attend. Again, it's specialist to just this question, so you'll have to find a way to paraphrase what it tells you in the table. Next, secondary schools you can change to educational institutions, and you can change the years between 2010 and 2020 to from the years 2010 to 2020. In Cambodia, just stay the same. You don't have to paraphrase every word, just paraphrase most of it. Now we have an introduction that is easily a level 7. The table gives information about the percentages of young people that attend educational institutions in Cambodia from the years 2010 to 2020. Overview. In the overview, we look at the main features, and you always start with the word overall. This just gives you a nice starting to talk about the main trends, but not talk about the detail. The detail is left for the body paragraphs, which we'll talk about next. So, overall, we can see that the amount of students not going to school at all has dropped. We said in our plan, we saw the percentage of students not going to school at all has dropped to 0. We won't say 0 now, we'll just say the amount of students not going to school has dropped. We've also seen that government schools and private schools, their proportion of students has remained steady, which means kind of stayed the same. No big dramatic increase or decreases. And we can see the percentage of students attending specialist schools is growing quickly. Again, we don't need specifics in the overview, just talk about the general trends and start with the word overall. The body paragraphs is where you start to add some detail to the overall features of your table. Always start with an adverb. I like to use interestingly. It's always good to group your information, so in this body paragraph I'm going to be talking about specialist schools and government schools. So my paragraph would read, interestingly, the percentage of students that attended specialist schools increased dramatically between 2010 and 2020. There are triple the proportion of students going to specialist school in 2020 than there was in 2010, 5% to 15% respectively. Government schools accounted for the biggest percentage of Cambodian students in all 3 years, but it stayed around 3/4. Now you can see what we've done there, we've changed proportion and percentage around so we can use more synonyms. We've also used triple because the percentage has tripled from 5% to 15%. These little words you can put in really help you get to a level 7. We've also changed 75% to around 3/4. Now we've said around because it's not exactly 75% on every year, but it's always around 3/4, which is 75%. In the little table you can see percentages and what cheat words you can use to paraphrase what the percentages are. For example, 47% to 49%, you could say under half. The second body paragraph, you should talk about your other group of data. So in this one, I will be talking about the students that don't go to school at all and the ones that attended private school. I always like to start the second body paragraph with a linking word or a cohesive device. So for this one, I've chosen on the other hand. We could say, on the other hand, the proportion of students not attending school dropped from 1/10 in 2010 to 0 in 2020. The percentage of students in private school has steadily declined from 15% in 2010 down to just 10% in 2020. So as you can see again, we've changed 10% to 1/10. We've changed 0% to just 0 or none. And we've also said, even though the private schools have stayed the same, their proportion has steadily declined just a little bit from 15% to 10% over the 10 years. That's all you need to do. Keep it simple. Do not add a conclusion. Your 4 paragraphs are enough for a level 7. Conclusions make you add opinions and maybe try to analyze the data, and we're not analyzing, we're just reporting. That's how you get a level 7 on the IELTS Academic Writing Task 1. Stop the clock. That wasn't too boring. I'm a bit more awake now than I was at the start of the video, and I hope you are too. We started 30 seconds left there at the end, so I just want to take this opportunity to tell you that you also need to vary your sentence structure. To see how to vary your sentence structure, check out this video on all the different types of sentence structure for the Academic Writing Task 1. And if you fancy checking out how to write about a line graph, check out this video.